India ranked third globally outside of the United States with more than 77 million gross square feet of LEED-rated green buildings in 2023, according to data released by the World Green Building Council. Now, as we approach the Earth Day on 22nd April, amidst growing concerns for planet Earth, which is combating serious challenges of climate change, we probe India's green building movement to ask, what have we got right so far? What's missing, and how do we accelerate the drive for cleaner, greener, responsible built environment? Now, here's why this conversation is important. It's well documented that the built environment, which includes homes that we live in and buildings that we work in, contributes to 40% of carbon emissions. Now, these CO2 emissions are the biggest contributor to climate change or rising temperatures and global heat waves that we are all experiencing. Break down this 40% and you get 28% of emissions which come from operating a building, which essentially means the energy needed to heat, cool and power them. The remaining 11 to 12%, which is known as embodied carbon footprint, is counted from the materials used in a building like steel, cement, glass, and how sustainably have these been made, plus the activity of construction of the building itself. The most important statistics to remember and why we're doing this show, that 70% of India's buildings are yet to be built. That's the biggest reason why we must focus on getting it right. We have three important guests and stakeholders on our panel. Amit Kumar Sinha, CEO and MD of Mahindra Lifespace, India's leading developer when it comes to commitment to green buildings. Amit, thank you so much for making the time. We also have B. Santhanam, CEO at Saint-Gobain Asia Pacific in India, a global material supplier and a company which is pledged to reduce carbon footprint on its operations and also to help customers build more sustainably. Mr. Santhanam, good to have you with us, sir. Mili Majumdar, Managing Director, Green Building Council of India or GBCI, which is known for developing the leadership in energy and environmental design LEED certification system. Mili also goes very deep into the research in this area. Mili, pleasure to have you with us always. Amit, let me start with you. You know, Mahindra in the real estate space is one of the companies which is committed to very big targets, let's say net zero energy, waste and water buildings by 2030. You also have the country's first net zero energy project in Mahindra Eden in Bengaluru. Tell us, how challenging or easy has this journey been?
Thank you, Manisha, for having me, and thanks for saying great things about Mahindra. We are trying to do our best as it talks about carbon and multiple other things. So thank you. As you know, as you correctly said, I'll highlight maybe 3 or 4 points. First is 75% of India is yet to be built, as you touched upon. So we have a great opportunity to build the right buildings, right set of infrastructure, urban development along with it. So that's a great opportunity. But the understanding of what net zero means, what green building actually does, is actually not very clear. So as we launched our second net zero energy and waste project in Mumbai 2 months back, there are a lot of customers saying that, hey, we don't understand net zero, but it looks green and you can breathe easy when you live in our complex. So that was the easiest sales pitch we could have. You know, we are spending a lot of time to educate our customers what net zero actually means and what it does well for all of us as human beings and the planet. But the third point is, how do we actually solve this problem? I think the biggest issue is the design. I think most of the design itself is not what we call climate responsive design. So you design the building in such a way that it allows you to get light, but it prevents the heat from coming inside. Mm-hmm. Those elements of design are extremely important, which are not yet fully captured. And then you touched upon embedded carbon, like we have cement, steel, aluminum, many of these things actually go into the building construction. That itself needs to be optimized. The uses of green power, like this was the first breakthrough moment for us in Bangalore. You know, when you are an industrial company, you can get green energy from the grid. But when you're residential complexes, you can't. So we actually worked hard with the Karnataka government and we were able to get green electrons to make it easy as a low tension customer to supply to Mahindra Eden in Bangalore. So these are the few, like the awareness is an issue, the climate responsive design, which is not very well understood, needs to be really, explained to every level in the organization. And you need to work through the partners as well as the government agencies to make sure that whatever you want to achieve through these buildings does get done over a period of time.
You know, Amit, you've brought up a very interesting aspect that, it's you need to work with the state government to actually get the grid clean energy. Mr. Santhanam, let me come to you. My question to you is, in general, how open are developers, hotel owners, retailers that you work with on their commitment to cutting down carbon footprint? Would they pay more for your product, which is manufactured more sustainably?
I think today, whether it's real estate developers, leading builders, or people who are occupying the buildings, which are quite often multinationals as well as large Indian companies, are not only looking at energy conservation, which was really historically what we've been doing, but looking at CO2 footprint in totality, which meant reducing the embodied carbon as well as operational carbon. Builders are really looking at it. Has it happened in the residential space? Not yet. I think people like Mahindra and others are driving that. But in the commercial and the retail space, today CO2 is really being reckoned. There are many things that we have to do. One, a developer, as he said, a sustainable design principles which will incorporate CO2 footprint calculations, circularity in the heart of the design. So when we get to the architects and the builders and the designers at the early stage, we find that it becomes very easy. And I wanted to add one little thing, Manisha. Today, for commercial spaces, it's cheaper to build a green building than a regular building.
Wow.
For commercial, not yet for residential. So your house and our houses may cost a little bit more for commercial.
Why is that?
I think it's very simple. I think when you look at the CO2 footprint in totality, you reduce the weight of the building. When you reduce the weight of the building, when you replace partition walls with equally sustainable products, you find that you not only reduce the weight of the building, so you use less steel, cement, concrete, and many other things. So the overall cost is lower. And today, the sustainable building materials, 95% of the green label products are available for building in India. So we are in a very right space. In a way, in a perverse way, I'm happy that India has not built, because we can do it more sustainably than the rest of the world.
I know. And exactly that. We need to get it right. We need to have these conversations. Mili, I know that when the press release comes from you, it comes with a lot of positivity that we now rank number 3 outside of the US when it comes to green building ratings. My question to you is, tell me, what have you seen as a shift towards embodied carbon footprint, counting that carbon emission, and also on design principles? Are we slow? Are we moving at the pace that you'd like to see change at?
Thank you, Manisha. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. So I definitely see that there is a transition and the level of awareness is much, much higher. So what was, kind of good to do earlier is a must do and is non-compromisable now. So people's knowledge level have progressed, and to what Mr. Santhanam said or what Amit ji said, that we have plethora of materials, understanding on how to do green. So now definitely I'm seeing a shift in, moving to more stringent levels and kind of expanding the periphery of green. So when I say expanding the periphery of green, so typically in, you would see in technical terms, we define emissions in 3 scopes. So earlier we were only talking about the operational scope. So now we are moving to more embodied, as well as, how people commute to offices, and that too in eco-friendly modes, in EVs, how your infrastructure around is, how, cool is the space microclimate around your building, and how you reduce embodied emissions, and also how you are bringing the supply chain. So everything is getting counted. And the green buildings are also, rating systems are also progressing towards that. So in the recently launched LEED version 5, which is just out for public comments, you would see that the targets are much steeper. Now to get a platinum LEED, you really have to work hard and you have to be net zero. So, and it's not that it cannot be done. Earlier, it was very difficult. It was more expensive. And I would agree to what Mr. Santhanam said, that it's not so now. So now, and the thing which I want to mention here is that there is a lot of greenwashing that can happen. and we need to collectively plug that. So monitoring and, kind of displaying how much you're consuming and having disclosures around that is very important. And we also are seeing the regulatory mechanism. For example, SEBI has mandated all large corporations to have ESG disclosures, and green buildings are embedded within that. So there is a lot of inclusivity of green building within larger policy dialogue, disclosure, corporate commitments, and that's definitely is giving the larger push to the sector.
All right.
Okay. Always optimistic.
So I get that point, and I was precisely coming to that. One is to get your building rated, one is to make a commitment to whether it's energy or waste net zero. Amit, what are the tools that you're using to continuously monitor the performance of the building once that rating is done, once you've instituted certain things? Because, at some point you are handing over to the RWA, Amit, right? And I have seen, at least in several places, green rated buildings do actually languish after a while. Those rainwater harvesting pits get clogged, the solar rooftop just gets abandoned, the panels get abandoned. So my question is, there's so much technology. How do you monitor and continue to drive the building to be efficient, let's say over the next 40 years? Have you thought through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we have to come up with solutions that last the lifetime of a building. And we have to break this question that you have into the three parts. Net zero energy is getting easier. Net zero waste is next in line, and net zero water is probably the toughest. But let me give you an example of net zero energy, which is what we are seeing structurally getting solved. At the end, what you'll find is, as Mr. Santhanam talked about, why commercially buildings are cheaper than residential. I think the same applies to a green building over a 20-30 year period is cheaper for customers. And it's in their best interest of the consumers to maintain them in that way. The reason is simple. When you don't have a net zero building, you consume more electricity. And let's say if you were consuming 100 units of electricity, if you were to design it well, you need 1/3 less energy, 1/3 fewer electrons. So what that means is, even if you're sourcing electrons and then you put in situ some, in our Eden project, you put a windmill at the top of the building, but you put solar for sure, it brings down another 5-10% because there is not enough surface area to solve for the requirements. But even if you source the green electrons, which are 10% more expensive, instead of paying for 100 electrons, you're paying for, like, say, 60, and at 10% higher, 65. You still save 35% cost of the bill. Right. And then when you apply it to, let's say, common area electricity, people see a significant, remarkable reduction in the common area electricity. And they have to see that if they don't follow this through, if they don't maintain the solar panels on the windmills or don't manage the grid connection, it's going to hurt them economically. And it's a great incentive aligned. Similarly, if you go to the waste part, we put the waste composter and all the partnership with the vendors. But I think we are still far away from finding those right vendors who will not do the landfill in the wrong way. The C&D, the construction and demolition. I used to live in Gurgaon. On the sides of the roads, you find so much of C&D products lying there. I think that needs to be solved through partnership with the government, because there needs to be there. And similarly, water for residential extremely difficult because there is not enough rainwater harvesting that you can do in situ locally. But you need to find alternate ways to own water bodies and other things that allow you to make it net zero water. The first one is along the way. Second can be solved with the right partnership with the ecosystem. The third one will take a lot more time, and you'll have to work with the ecosystem and the government to achieve that.
All right. Very interesting breakdown, Amit. Thank you for doing that for us. But we have to keep this conversation going. We'll take a quick break. We do, as a country, have a net zero carbon emission target to meet by 2070. So we need a lot more movement on green buildings. Stay with us. by opting to buy an apartment in a gold-rated green housing project, you can reduce your energy and water consumption by 20 to 30% and lower your carbon emissions by up to 35%. Yet, how many of us really go out and base our buying decision on those parameters? Very few of us. So that's the reason why we are talking about green rated buildings or sustainable buildings ahead of the Earth Day on 22nd April. Mr. Santhanam, coming back to you, we already spoke a lot about saving operational energy, or whether it's waste or water, and what can we do about it. But the larger conversation is also what goes into making a building and how do we get India to move in that direction. What is happening at a global level, and are you bringing those best practices in India to reduce a building's embodied carbon footprint?
Absolutely. I think we have a slogan in the company. It goes like this: sustainability saves and sustainability sells. It's a very simple thing. And when you reduce the embodied carbon in your, which is built into the making of your product, be it steel, cement, aluminum, glass, plasterboard, what essentially is happening is that you're replacing high cost energy with renewable energy, which are cheaper. So firstly, sustainability saves. When you move from normal steam to a biomass generated steam, you save cost in India. And India is at the epicenter on this energy transition at low cost. The second one is increasingly consumers are buying and paying a premium for low embodied carbon. Recently, one of the top 3 IT and digital firm in India commissioned a 500,000 square feet of low carbon glass, and that's just the beginning. So to me, sustainability saves and sustainability sells. And that is really the slogan that anyone who's working in the building materials ecosystem must work.
Okay. Amit, coming to you. Sustainability sells, but Mr. Santhanam is dealing with B2B customers. Right at the top of the show, you said it's so difficult to explain to a buyer of an apartment in your project what net zero energy or net zero waste actually means. So how do we get this from a push to a pull?
Yeah, on a lighter note, I buy from him, so we buy a lot of glass from him. So
you're committed to net zero by 2030.
yeah. But I think I'll just say 2 very simple things. I think there is a lot of education awareness that we are doing. In fact, I gave one home free when I launched Vista for the customer who had the lowest carbon footprint. So we had a contest and then we did a lottery. So that was the one way to get awareness. But 2 very simple things. One is for the builders and one is for the customer. Like for the customer is, let's say, just like EVs, give some benefits to the customer. Like, so EV equivalent is net zero energy building, right? Why not give some kind of a property tax, some kind of advantage to customers who have decided to own homes which abide by these certificates? So that's a very simple but very elegant way to actually solve this problem and give some incentive directly to the home consumers, and it will induce customers to understand and then buy more. The second is for the builders to induce them. I think if you either time or more FSI, right, give them faster clearance, which is no cost to the company, to BMC or to any municipal agency. Give them fast track, give them single window clearance, so that if they're trying to do more responsible thing, allow them to make some returns on the investment they're making, or give them a little bit of extra FSI, maybe 5%, 10%, that, hey, and some states, some agencies do that, but it's not consistent. But if that can be brought in, it just allows us to make up for the additional costs that we have to endure for making a building sustainable. And that just gets well understood and well spread out.
Absolutely. I mean, there are states which do give you 5% extra FAR, some discount in stamp duty, sometimes on property tax. But, it's kind of scattered across India. There's no uniform policy. Mili, final word from you. Anything else that a customer should look at when he's looking at a green rated project to buy in and put his money out for?
Yeah, performance matters, and green buildings have a deep connect with the health of a person. We have done a recent study in certified green buildings and found that many of them are not maintained to be green. And there was a deep connect with the occupant health their sleep got disturbed, they had other lifestyle issues, and they were not knowing also that maybe the filtration system was not working well. The daylight was not getting, access. So I think very important that performance matter. If you are building green, just ensure that you are seeing how it is performing, and the occupants are getting benefits. And as soon as they see benefits in energy bills, in health, there will be an automatic pull from them. And the young generation is very smart. I think they'll ask for it.
Young generation will be able to afford to buy their own home, or will I be funding my son and daughter's home purchase is another big question, looking at the way real estate prices are running away. Thank you so much to all of you for joining in this very important conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
There's only one planet we have, planet Earth. So let's do our bit by opting for more sustainable choices at every step, whether it's buying or building your own home or saving on energy, water, waste in our daily lives. Goodbye, and thanks so much for joining this Earth Day special.